John, guess what?
Oh, your Mondeo's not come back again, has it?
No,
You've sold another Kia Picanto.
no, wrong again, Jonathan. I'm actually really rather excited because not only can I buy cars from Carwow now, I can also advertise my leggy but really rather affordable used cars to the millions of people clicking on Carwow and its sister site, Auto Express, every single month. Carwow tell me that 3/4 of their audience are considering used cars, and it's getting better every day. Plus, it's simple, cost effective, and you get two major marketplaces for the price of one, so you never miss a car change.
I think that might be the most interesting thing you've ever said on this podcast.
John, how dare you? Anyway, car dealers who want to find out more can click on carwow.co.uk/partners/car dealer podcast.
Welcome back to the Car Dealer Podcast, where we pick our favourite stories of the week and ask an industry guest to choose which were the best. I'm John Ray, and joining me this week, having safely extracted himself from Shanghai Airport without being detained, as far as I'm aware, is James Baggett. James, how are you?
Well, I mean, it was a close call, if I'm honest, John, getting back out of China.
Yes,
but anyway,
whose fault was that, James?
well, sort of mine. Do you want me? Should I tell you the story? I might as well tell the story, mightn't I? So I was over in Shanghai for the motor show, and for people who haven't been to China before, it's very difficult to get into the country, especially if you're a journalist. You need all manner of different visas and permissions, which takes a long time to get. So there is a way around that. And it's a well-known loophole, which is called a transit visa. So you fly in, and then you fly back. When you come home, you come back via another country. I was coming back via Hong Kong. So your time in China is basically seen as just a layover, which meant that I could pretty much do what I wanted while I was there, go to the show, drive some cars, etc., and still get back without any problems. Unfortunately, I had a bit of a medical issue while I was out there. I had a back operation last year, had a bit of a problem with that, needed to get back a little bit sooner. So my kind and gracious host, which was a motor while I was out there, offered to fly me back earlier, but the flight back was via it wasn't via anywhere. It wasn't via Hong Kong. It was a direct flight back to Gatwick. So when I got to border control at Shanghai Airport, I handed my documents over to the lady, and she looked at them and she said, "Are you going to Hong Kong?" I said, "No, I'm going to Gatwick." She said, "No, you're going to Hong Kong." "No, I'm definitely going to Gatwick." And at that point, she just waved my documents in the air, and an army of Chinese border guards came over and took me away to a private area where they basically gave me a very serious dressing down, John, and said that if you ever come back to China, you have to get a proper visa. You're not allowed to use a transit visa ever again. And even to the point where they stamped my documents after reading me the Right Act for half an hour, handed them over, and then took them back again. And the Chinese border official just proceeded to stare at my passport for about 5 minutes just to make me feel even more nervous than I was already. I mean, it was not a pleasant experience, John. Not something I want to go back through. But my time in China was amazing, if I'm honest. I was only there for 3 short days, but I did go to the Shanghai show, and this was a week after going to the New York Motor Show, which was very, very different. I mean, New York had one hall and not very many cars, new cars that were relevant to the UK. Shanghai had something like 8 halls with a huge number of cars that were very relevant to the UK. It wasn't just the Chinese brands. You had people like Bentley, BMW, Mercedes there displaying their wares. But it was, what I found absolutely staggering was the fact that there was just so many brands there that I couldn't even pronounce the names of. I mean, I wouldn't even know who they were. But they had huge stands with cars that would not look out of place on the UK roads right now. I mean, there are so many brands out there queuing up, waiting to come here and frankly take over. I mean, I think the thing that really struck home was the fact that China had we've obviously been reporting about China and the Chinese car manufacturers coming here, and I don't think I had taken them seriously enough. I'll admit that on the podcast. It wasn't until I walked around these halls and I could see China is the future. These car manufacturers are going to take over. Like it or not, they will be coming here and they will be stealing the European car manufacturers' lunch, because they've been asleep at the wheel, a lot of these European brands. I think China is so far advanced with the cars that they're producing. They're nice to look at. They're pretty good to drive. They're not perfect, but they will very rapidly get there. They've got great technology, and the deals they are doing are unbelievable. And I think some brands over here they're going to disappear. I think they're going to really, really be hit by some of them. I mean, I had a drive of an Emoda while I was out there. First time I've been behind the wheel of one. I was very impressed. And I'm not just saying that because they took me out there. I'm saying that because I genuinely mean that. You know me well enough, John, that I will always say what I think. And that Emoda was very impressive. BYD have had an absolute storming start to the year here, haven't they? And from what I hear, they want to be the number one car brand in the UK in the not too distant future. I mean, it's taken over from the likes of Ford, Vauxhall, Volkswagen. I mean, it was amazing.
When do they want to do that?
Sorry?
When do they want to be number one?
That's well, from what I hear, within 3 years is their plan to take over and be the number one brand here. And from what I saw out there, I believe them. I honestly believe them, because they're going to rampage through the UK. I genuinely believe that. But so it was an eye-opening trip, if I'm honest. I'm very pleased to go there. I don't think I'll be rushing back to China. I felt a bit nervous going in. I felt very nervous coming out, especially considering the experience I had. And I get the sort of feeling when you're out there that you're just sort of being watched. It just sort of might just be me feeling that way, but it certainly felt like it. But it was really, really eye-opening. So, yeah, an amazing couple of weeks, if I'm honest.
Well, shall I introduce our guest?
Yeah, let's.
Because I believe our guest has also been at the Shanghai Motor Show and hopefully had a much nicer time leaving the country than you did. Joining us this week is Claire Miller, an independent advisor on all things electrification and mobility. Claire, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Nice to see you, Claire. I mean, we didn't get a chance to catch up in Shanghai. I was quite busy covering the show. But I mean, firstly, what were you doing out there?
Yeah. So I'm out to see the cars, right? Exactly. I mean, exactly what you've just said. China's where it's at. In a past life, I spent quite a lot of time working in China. I used to go backwards and forwards a lot. In fact, over my whole career, been to see lots of manufacturing sites in Shenzhen. Obviously, now home of BYD. So I've been going out there 20 odd years when the roads weren't metalled. Now it's a tier 1 city. And so you can see the rise, which is a lot to do with BYD. And out to see everything you've just talked about, the technology, the culture. And it feels different. As you say, it feels different. It feels like a can-do attitude everywhere. And what with that and their advanced digital manufacturing, these companies are able to make a different car on every position in their line. It's mainly automated. They're pushing out 40 cars an hour, 20 plants. Like, they're coming and they're serious. So, yeah, it was really exciting to be out there and see the cars and also to talk to some of the supply chain. So people like CATL, who make batteries, but they're at pains to say they don't just make batteries. They're moving into, the platform, being a platform provider. Huawei, who are not just mobile phones, they're like car features coming at it. So exciting to see different technologies, different features all coming together in this melting pot where, a year turnaround on a new car is becoming standard for the Chinese. So, yeah, I had to get out there and see it.
And that's compared to like a 6-year turnaround or something, isn't it, for a European manufacturer?
I think they think that the UK is just and European markets are just lazy in comparison. I mean, I think they see us ripe for the picking is the general consensus I got while I was out there. And I think one of the things that sort of shocked me was I was out there with Emoda and JQ, which are two new brands. Emoda launched in October, JQ launched in January here, and that they're owned by Chery, which is the largest exporter of passenger cars from China. Chery is a brand in itself over there, and they had pretty much a whole haul of other brands I hadn't even heard of. Things like Exceed, Luxeed. They had Heycar. There was a huge number of different brands, and you just think. I looked around them; they had massive stands, which at Geneva Motor Show would have been the sort of size that a Ford or Jaguar Land Rover would have. And these are brands that aren't even here yet, but they're just queuing up, waiting to come in. Claire, what did you think when you walked around those halls? What really caught your eye?
Well, I mean, the scale. As you say, it was 8 halls. I think I managed to get round maybe 4, not in deep detail, but I think I probably got around 4. And what a nice problem to have, making a tough decision about. I'm just never going to make it over there. I think I did about 20,000 steps. I don't know how you did with your bad back and things, but yeah, it's just
probably what caused it.
I said, yeah, I definitely had to soak my feet that night. And like you say, the scale of the stands and the scale of the production. The scale of the production, even of the brands that are totally new, maybe quite niche. I mean, Xiaomi stood out for me. Co-located with CATL, really interesting. So they're a company that apparently, according to my Chinese hosts, were kind of making home and garden equipment a few years ago. Now they've worked with CATL, got the platform, and now they've got a brand new car. So yeah, I think that's the most mind-blowing thing for me was like the scale of the production, and also like how kind of irrelevant Europe and America felt being in those halls.
Yep.
Just felt like it's not like we're looking to those markets. Let's pander to those markets. Let's really understand those markets. Although they're definitely like in that space, right? Understanding the localization. This is first and foremost like. The China market's enormous, and we're a local, homegrown sort of success story, left, right, and centre. So yeah, I found that like exactly to your point as well. Like, yeah, a very good learning experience because they are coming and they're coming fast, and we've got to embrace it.
Yeah, we do have to embrace it, and I think they've watched the Japanese brands and the success they've had globally. The Korean brands, and they've looked on enviously at that and decided that now's the time to pounce. And I think the thing that sort of struck me is that the brands over here that are really going to struggle are the ones that just sort of make cars that people buy because they're at a reasonable price. It's the ones that people don't gravitate to because they desperately want a Peugeot or desperately want a Citroen or they desperately want a Seat. They gravitate to them because the cars look quite good, the tech's pretty good, and they're quite comfortable. Well, you put a Chinese car next to those sorts of brands, that similar size model, it's going to be 10, 15 grand cheaper. The tech's going to be better, and it might not drive quite as well. But the thing is, most people who drive cars don't love cars. They're driving them because they need to, and it's all down to the cost. So I think that's what really struck home is I think these brands over here, these legacy brands, they're gonna struggle in the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, the thing I couldn't get my head around was. The amount of sub £20,000 vehicles that are coming that are not little toy town cars. They are decent size, decent tech cars. And as you say, like, what is brand loyalty? Is it even a thing anymore? I don't think it will be in a couple of years. I mean, I think it will be completely eroded. And as you say, couple that with, really long warranties and hardly any parts to go wrong. I mean, what more can you say? It's a really exciting time, though, because I think it's going to turn the UK market on its head, and it's going to be really exciting for people. I guess the downside is it could be quite a confusing few years with so many brands. To your point, so many brands or families of brands that are made by one manufacturer. That could be an interesting edge to this, is that people get maybe a bit of like new car fatigue, that there's like so many models coming. Maybe that's something to watch out for, that actually people will go, well, maybe I'll just hold off for another 3 months because I don't know what might come next. That's something I'm definitely going to watch out for over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I've chatted to a few dealers off the back of those articles that I've written about my trip to China this week, and a few of them are representing Chinese brands, some of them aren't. And one of them described it to me. They said it's a bit like the Grand National at the moment. You just got to try and work out which horse you need to back because one of them is going to win, and you want to make sure you've got the money on that brand. And I thought that really does sum it up. sum it up perfectly, John. And we had a discussion, didn't we, this week about this and like about these cars, and you sort of likened it to the sort of when people are buying a dishwasher or buying a washing machine.
That's how Batch likened it last week, and I sort of think, I think most people don't, unless they are, as you say, they want an Audi because that's the image they want to put out into the world. They're probably not that fussed anymore, no. And I think we're in this weird sort of time where brands are very big, like clothing brands. People want big brands across their t-shirts, don't they? And et cetera, et cetera. But at the same time, all the stuff we buy on Amazon, 90% of the stuff you buy on Amazon is complete nonsense branding that's just been, half the time we say AI-generated gobbledygook, isn't it? And people aren't going, oh, right, okay, I need a hairdryer. Oh, I'll look for a Babyliss or whatever. They're just whatever's there and is cheapest and is okay, they'll buy that. So I can see the same sort of thing. And like phones as well. I mean, Huawei's not really here anymore, is it? But people are more open to random brands now, I think.
Yeah,
do you think we've sort of been caught napping ourselves a little bit? Do you think we've taken these Chinese brands seriously enough? I mean, I certainly don't think I have.
Is that a question for me?
Yeah, a question for you.
So
yeah.
I think, like as you say, you've not really paid much attention to them, but I think now is the point at which they're starting to become really serious products. Like I think if you look at MG, for example, I haven't driven a lot of MGs, I have to admit, but the last one I drove, which is their new crossover-y thing, it's not a ZS, it's called MGS5 EV. That is a really good bit of kit, and I think it's so much better than the ZS that came before it. So I think it's partially just that we're reaching it at a point where they're not just like, like to Kia, for example. It's not just, we're not looking at like the Kia Mentor era of the 90s where it was just like this beige thing with lots of kit on it for really cheap. It's now actually become a car that you want to own. I think that's the tipping point we've reached at the minute. So that's why you've probably not noticed anything, James.
No, I think you're probably right. Claire, you've obviously focused on EVs throughout your career. You spent a lot of time at Octopus, didn't you, as well? I've seen from your LinkedIn. And what's your take on the current state of the EV market? I mean, it's been a difficult transition, hasn't it? I mean, manufacturers seem to be struggling to get those retail buyers in. I mean, what's your take on the current situation?
Yeah, so I joined Octopus at the start of 2019 and then went on to be one of the founding directors of the leasing business. And I had the honour of being that person talking to BYD in the early days and talking about when BYD were going to come to the UK. So this is like such an interesting point to be having this conversation. In terms of the business at Octopus EV, in 2019 we were working out like how can we as Octopus bring EVs to the mass market. So still at that stage where it wasn't clear like what the routes to market were going to be. Would there be a way that we could lease cars to people? Would they embrace leasing? And then the announcement was made, the benefit in kind tax rate was going to drop to 0% in April 2020. And so then we were like, okay, we need to get laser focused. This is it, the resurgence of SALSAC for electric vehicles. So that was really our run in to looking at how to get EVs on the road. And I think, it goes without saying probably for your audience that the impact of salary sacrifice and to an extent BCH, those very low BIC rates, they've just creeping up, but they're going to creep up a little bit, not like fly up, and that has tipped volumes on the road towards those SALSAC volumes. And actually, when you think about BYD is a great example. Folks are looking at the prices, the really sort of tax efficient and value way of getting a vehicle. If your company is on a EV salary sacrifice scheme, then you have the opportunity to see those brands, and it kind of, I don't know, I think it's leapfrogged people faster into EVs, and it's helped them to try out these new brands that they otherwise wouldn't necessarily have done. So yeah, it's a really interesting period of time to see those new brands coming onto the market. And actually in EVs generally, I think there are people that would never have gone EV if it hadn't been like so much cheaper to do it that way. I guess the challenge we've got now is we're starting to see cars come off lease in volume. We're in that 3 year, well, actually probably 4 years, actually. If you think 2021, we started to see volume going on. So now we're starting to see decent volumes coming off lease. And it's really exciting, but it's a really choppy time, right? I'm a keen listener of the podcast because I find it really fascinating seeing what's gone on, what's coming off, what's the market making of it? And at the same time, you've got brand new stuff dropping in. I think, John, your point there is a really good one. You end up with this mix of different models where you go, well, for secondhand, you can have this. Actually, new, you can have this. And I think that we're moving into an era of like the mobile phone, I don't know, like the chopping in your mobile phone frequently kind of stage of the market, which again, I mean, residual values, we could be here all day and all night talking about what's going to happen because it's choppy waters. And so I think that first phase is done. I think you're absolutely right, James. I think we are into a position now where these new brands coming is becoming the norm. And I think hopefully we're seeing volume coming off that EVs, the secondhand, are starting to be a thing.
Yeah, and you make a very interesting point there, because that's been mentioned to me a few times actually in the last few weeks about this huge volume of electric vehicles that are going to be heading back to the used car market. And we saw in the April figures from Cap HPI that used car prices for EVs dipped quite a lot more than petrol and diesel. And I wonder if that is the start of seeing lots of this volume come back in, because there are still a lot of used car dealers out there that are too nervous about selling used cars. What's your take on that? What do you think needs to be pushed? What do you think needs to change for electric vehicles to really take off? I mean, we've talked about incentives many times on this podcast with lots of different people. Do you think something is needed, and what would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, for sure, like the only incentive, inverted commas, that exists right now is that low benefit in kind tax rate, for individuals. It's a very hard one, given the state of the economy. Any ask that asks something of Treasury is probably not worth asking at the moment, being like really pragmatic. I think some of the low cost, impactful things that can happen are around general like education and support around EVs. And like governments talked about it, past governments talked about it, this government's, started thinking about it. I think, generally talking up EVs is important, just like, like any big societal transition. And at the moment, it isn't really there. I hate to say it, but the oil and gas lobby have got a lot to lose in this transition, and they've got a lot of funding. So, talking to the experts here, as journalists, there's a lot of funding to put anti-EV sentiment in the market. And that actually, that's just helping protect those oil and gas, dinosaurs persist. That's not helping dealers. That's not helping individuals get confident about the technology. And I think probably the other one is it is a brand new technology to a lot of people, and it puts the cost of your motoring often into your home energy bill. And actually, I don't know about you, but most people, regardless of what they do and their backgrounds, how technical or non-technical they are, they don't want to look at their energy bill. They want to talk about it. And so actually, if you start thinking about how you can talk to people about how much this motoring costs or doesn't cost, and some of the practicalities of how to charge, where to charge, and actually how for most people, for most of their motoring, it is not going to be an issue. It's going to be a once a week charge, maybe twice a week. I think you start to get to the heart of, where people's anxieties are at. And certainly, I mean, you had Patrick Cresswell on last week from Clearwater. That's a company I work with and have been involved with for a couple of years, building confidence for the driver by giving them as much information about the EV as possible, and then helping dealers as well. Because you say dealers have got a million and one other things going on, as well as now having to upskill themselves into being EV experts as well. So I think products like that can give you a bit of a cheat sheet and a bit of a quick fix there are going to help over the next sort of couple of years. Because certainly for most people, as you guys know, going into an EV for most people will work for what they need it to do, and it will save them a lot of money. So there's a lot of incentive there to get people sort of to trust it and go for it.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that the biggest problem we have is that there is a lot of skepticism out there about it, and I've freely talked about it many times in this podcast that I have not had the best experience when I have been running EVs. Public charging infrastructure, when I've had to use it, it's been poor, and I've had genuinely, like most of the time, it's been a pretty poor experience. John, you're living with an EV once again, aren't you?
I am.
You are a really exciting Peugeot. You took me me for a spin in it yesterday. I was over the moon. Thank you for that. But I mean,
James, if you were stocking that car, you'd be saying it's a really lovely vehicle.
lovely car, beautiful, great condition for the age of mileage. Yeah,
That's right, exactly.
But how are you finding it this time? Because you've run a number of electric cars, haven't you? I mean, you're not scared of running them.
You're actively asking me about EVs, James. It's very exciting. Normally, you just want to move on immediately. No, I mean, do you know what? I haven't driven it very far. This is the longest I've driven it. What I will say, the Megane I had before. Did I mention I drove a Megane for a bit? That might have come up.
You did. Yeah, you droned on about it last week. I think.
Yeah. Anyway, that had I don't know what the range of that was, 175 miles if you're on the motorway, probably, which was that's kind of okay. I think that's enough. This one seems to be more like 250. And I suddenly am arriving here like, oh my God, I've got all this charge left. How's this happened? Oh, it's great. But we had a fun incident at we don't have an office anymore, do we? But the shared office facility that's next to your dealership, we had a company meeting there. And there's a weird semi-rapid charge, like it's 25 kilowatt hours or something, CCS. And I've always plugged into that, never had a single problem. And we had 2 Stellantis EVs in the office, in inverted commas, this week, didn't we? One of our colleagues had a C3 Citroen. Neither of them liked this charger. So I don't have... It's those occasional things
What was wrong with that electricity that came out of that plug that it didn't like?
Was it different to the other check, and then it went, no, it's not safe, and turned it off.
So, that's the problem. And then I got home in that C3. Unfortunately, I had to drive it back. And when I tried to plug it in, it wouldn't work with my charger for the first 4 times, and I plugged it in for the 5th time, and it worked. And these are the things. It's
that says to me like software on the vehicle and interoperability challenges, which, by the way, customers shouldn't have to worry about. So it's a really fair challenge. I think you're right. Infrastructure, like the infrastructure rollout, is brilliant if you live somewhere that it's up, it's running, it's working, and the journeys that you do. And so that's why you get these like really different experiences of what is the same thing. So if you happen to take a route like up the A1, good luck. Make a plan. If you're going up to Glasgow, best of luck. Definitely plan ahead. But if you're going across to like Bristol and then up to Liverpool, you are like there's just a wealth of opportunity to charge. So there's this patchiness, and also like with the best will in the world, it's been quite a long time since you've had to plan because you've only got a teeny tiny fuel tank, and you're going to have to stop at multiple places, and you're not sure. But like parents, grandparents, that was their experience if they were going on a long trip. You know what? People don't want to do that, and I'm there as well. I don't want to have to spend all day with maps and charts and apps, right? So and I know there's a lot of people working really hard on it, but it just can't come fast enough. So supporting that going forward. Another company I work with, Fuse, they run the back end of lots of EV charging networks and lots of places like Arnold Clark, for example. They run all their dealer charging and who else? A few other networks, and there's this thing about making sure you've got the right support when you need it. So actually, I don't know how into the public charge point regulations you are. People that know me will know I'm super geeky about standards.
I'm quite into it. I mean, it's
great, excellent.
I'll just go make myself a cup of tea.
Yeah, make myself a cup of tea. Carry on. But the great thing for drivers is that's put law in place that says there has to be a 24/7 support line. Like they have to be able to take contactless, and. There's a variety of requirements, and there's a body that then goes and checks, and companies will be held to account if they don't do it. I think it's those things, like there's a bit of policing, inverted commas, like there's a bit of like, a bit of a bite back if it's not up to scratch is really important because, there's you've got to build that confidence. And again, if you're stranded somewhere and like you say, it won't charge, they have to be on the phone to you and they have to be there supporting you. So, and I think that's the message that probably isn't getting out. I don't know. What do you think? Do you think that message is getting out that like that's a law that has to be there for charging?
I think from the helpline point of view, possibly. I mean, I've had to phone a few helplines, and I have always got through. Whether they've been actually any good or not is a slightly different matter. Like I phoned a BP Pulse one once because it wouldn't let my car go. The rapid charger wouldn't, and the particular car I had didn't have a button to eject the charger, so it was just stuck. And then they proceeded to spend 10 minutes trying to convince me I was in Luton when I was in Milton Keynes, which was not
massively helpful there for BP Pulse.
No, I mean, I might as well have been in Luton, really. But Yeah, not great. I mean, the other thing that frustrates me is the pricing. And I kind of feel like there needs to be, I don't know how you would regulate this, but some form of regulation on the pricing of charging. And I know we haven't necessarily got any regulation on petrol pricing. It's just hopes that the market will sort it all out. And you sort of understand that if you stop at motorway services, you're going to pay 20p more per litre. But for EVs, it's just I don't know. It's because it's electricity, and at home you have a price cap. You sort of feel like there should be a similar thing for charging out and about, and there just isn't.
I mean, yeah, John, you've really hit the nail on the head. I think this is probably the most hot topic within the industry. So within the sort of, every industry's got its bubble. Within the industry bubble, the hottest topic is customers who can charge at home are living in one like pricing reality. Those who rely on public charging are in a completely different world. And to your point, some of this super rapid charging, I think we can get our heads around the fact that's a service. You're sort of paying for that very fast, luxury, reliable service. Look, like, again, people who know me will be laughing because this is like how long's a piece of string kind of conversation. But one of the key things at the moment that's really painful is every time a charge point operator builds a charge point and connects it to the grid, they pay every day quite a high price for it just to be connected, even if it's not used. A standing charge. And that's not how it used to be. And I know that there's work going on and lobbying and debating about, let's look at that. Because for any business, if you've put money into building it, they've got to bag that into their numbers. But if they're not getting high utilization, we shouldn't be penalising them just to be connected. Of course, pay if it gets used. So I think there's some stuff like that that's going on. But yeah, certainly, like that's a super hot topic at the moment. And how do you help people get the best prices? So there's some cool stuff coming around, like what time you charge. Again, if you're on a journey, you've got to stop and fuel up, right? And so you can't make a decision. But if you are able to make a decision about what time you charge on the public network at different speeds, different places, there are now charge point operators and ecosystems are building up to say, a bit like at home, if you can charge overnight, you can get it cheap. If you can come in the evening, if you can come at this time, come at that time, because those charge point operators are buying the electricity at cheaper prices at different times. So there's stuff coming, keep an eye out. The other one I'd say is around, no affiliation, but stuff that people like Sainsbury are doing, for example, where you can tie together, you're charging at a bit of a cheaper rate, still more expensive than home, but you can tie it in with some other rewards for going shopping. I think that's going to become increasingly popular. Yeah.
John, I mean, as much as I love talking about electric cars, I mean, you know, it's a favourite topic of mine. I think we
sense I might win this week.
We should probably do some news.
Okay, so James and I are going to run through our favourite stories of the week, and at the end, Claire gets to decide which one of us chose the best ones and who is the winner. Batch won last week, so I'm going to let you go first, James. And he won, I'd just like to say, because I accidentally insulted our guest for driving a Tesla.
Did you?
Yeah.
Excellent. I mean, I missed that part of the podcast. I will go back and listen. Oh, dear. Okay, there's a number of things that have kicked off this week, but I am going to start with news that was published at the weekend that Heycar, the used car advertising platform, is no more. So they were a rival to the likes of Auto Trader, Kazoo.
Oh, it's very kind of you to say that about them, James.
I know. I was being diplomatic there, John. They were, they'd come into the same market, looking to pick up some dealers to advertise their used cars. They did it in a slightly different way. So you had to have cars that were younger than 10 years. They offered some slightly different guarantees. They were sort of like slightly different warranties they offered. And they were backed by Volkswagen Financial Services. They owned quite a large percentage of the business. I think it was well up to 70% or something. So they owned a large proportion. Volkswagen, the actual brand, owned a little bit more, and the rest of it was owned by Renault. Now, Heycar has made continuous losses since it launched in the UK in the summer of 2019. Most recent account showed it made a loss of 22.4 million in 23. We're waiting for 24 accounts to come out, and it made a loss in 22 of 30 million. So, it has really struggled. This was on revenue of just 7.4 million. So it brought in 7.4 million and lost 30. So it was clearly hemorrhaging large amounts of cash. Rumour has it they spent 250 million pounds on advertising the Heycar platform over the years. So that's clearly where a lot of that money has disappeared to.
Full disclosure, some of that to us.
Yeah, I think they did
Not
actually. Yes,
250 million pound worth, unfortunately.
No, unfortunately not. No, but yes, some of that to us. And unfortunately, Volkswagen Financial Services have decided to pull the plug. It was rather unexpected. Probably not that unexpected to some people who are a little bit closer to it, because you can't sustain those losses for such a huge amount of time as they did. And Volkswagen is not really in the best of places at the moment. They are struggling a little bit. They're going to be hit by tariffs. They're obviously struggling in the Chinese market, and they've got bigger problems, and they're obviously looking at these loss-making businesses that they've got investments in around the world, and that is one of them that they've finally decided to call it a day. So, very sad. It will lead to redundancies. They had 126 staff, I think, majority of them actually here in the UK. They operated in Germany and France, and there were some brilliant people at that business, and people that I know and have worked with over the years. I know they're fantastic people, and I think that's always the saddest thing when these sort of businesses disappear. There are real lives affected. But yes, that is off. That's going to be off the internet, John, I think is how they put it. No longer working. But they did snap up Honest John, didn't they, over their time? They bought that in 2020. A very, very good brand, Honest John. So it'll be interesting to see what happens next to these brands. Are they going to package them up, sell them to somebody else, or will they just disappear forever? I sort of hope not, because I think on the Honest John name in particular, over the years has built up a great reputation, and it should continue.
Yeah, it's got a good bank of content, Honest John, the website. And a great editorial team was subsumed into Heycar, as you say. Lots of people that we know. It's a difficult one, Heycar, because to me the name was always a bit wrong. Like, this is a new entrant for somewhere. I know this is just a Web 3.0 kind of name. Like, really, you could say, well, Carwow, what does that mean? But Heycar, again, they're not. It's a new brand in a very busy marketplace with lots of really strong brands already. So you've got to kind of stand out. And I don't think Heycar really says much about what is it. That's the thing.
If you were going to invest in a motor trade business at the moment, John, you wouldn't launch a used car marketplace, would you? No. It is a very crowded market.
But then it was launched a few years ago. It was a different time. Was it pandemic sort of era?
Well, just before the pandemic, 2019.
Yeah, very different situation. I think it was a really nice website. You can still go on there at the time of this particular podcast. But I just don't think it really. I've never looked at any stock on there. Personally, I kind of unfortunately forget it exists, and that's the perils of being like third or fourth place up against Auto Trader and all the other ones.
And when you cut out cars over 10 years old in a used car park in the UK, which is getting older, you're reducing your market, aren't you? And actually, if you're going to do it, you want to have all of market, really.
The sad thing is these things come and go, don't they? Like, Trusted Dealers was that, I might say, it was Trusted Dealers, wasn't it? There was that thing, 10 years ago. It was newer stuff. It was, selected dealer groups got involved in it. But that sort of disappeared. What I don't get is VW's involvement in this. And I think Renault might have had some involvement.
Yeah, they did. It was originally Mercedes, and they sold their shares out, and Renault bought them.
Right. But you never really saw, it was like, almost felt like a silent partner. Like, you didn't really see VW pointing people at Heycar. I don't really get what they were getting out of it, particularly because each of these brands has their own used car locator thing to push you to their dealer networks anyway. So I don't really get what the purpose of it was in the first place, to be brutally honest.
I mean, everybody's always looking for a rival to Auto Trader. A really strong second place. You've got the likes of Kazoo and Motors, Car Gurus, and others always really trying to push them. And I think dealers out there, the ones I talk to, the groups that I'm in, they're desperate for a really strong number two to start really challenging Auto Trader. But Auto Trader is dominant. I mean, we started tracking our leads at Clever Car Collection, like working out where they've all come from. In April, 90% of the leads were from Auto Trader. So, I mean, it's it says it all, doesn't it? I mean, that's the thing. If it works, that's people will continue to pay for it. And I think when you're launching another brand like Heycar, the one thing you've got to do is deliver leads. And if you can, if there's another one rival out there that could deliver the same amount of leads as Auto Trader does, then dealers will spend their money elsewhere. Yeah, I don't know. What did you think, Claire?
Yeah, I was shocked. Same. I was shocked. I'll be honest, I wasn't close to the numbers, so my initial reaction was, bloody hell, what's kind of gone on there? And then your point's well made. You look at the numbers and you say, regardless, you can't live with that revenue and that amount of losses. And I think your point is well made. I think Auto Trader is extremely dominant in the market, and for good reason, because they're delivering the leads. So yeah, it's I guess maybe with one less in the run, maybe this will help the others climb up the rankings a bit. But yeah, also thinking of those people who've lost their jobs, and there's some brilliant people at Heycar. Also got some industry mates there. So yeah, thinking about those people and hoping they get snapped up.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. We'll be right back after this short message from our sponsors. Now, I'm really rather excited because not only can I buy cars from CarWow, I can now advertise them to millions of people clicking on CarWow and its sister site, Auto Express, every single month. CarWow tell me 3/4 of their audience are considering used cars, and it's getting better every day. Plus, it's simple and cost effective. If you'd like to find out more, car dealers can click on carwow.co.uk/partners/car dealer podcast. John, over to you.
Okie doke. I'm going to keep it slightly with VW. Well, I'm going to combine two stories here about agency, because there's been lots of agency news going on. The first bit is there's been, this is a big story really. A leaked memo has revealed that VW Group has pulled the plug on all agency sales now across all its brands. So the final one to hold out was Cupra. And I think, was it exclusively on the Cupra Born, or was it across all Cupra models, this agency
I think
sales?
it was across all Cupra models.
Yeah.
Right. Well, no longer. It's gone. And I mean, was Cupra agency from the... I'm supposed to be telling you about this story, but I'm asking you. Was it agency from the start?
No.
Right. Okay. So anyway, it's gone. VW says this is to make things easier for its dealers from the point of view of lots of these dealer groups have multiple VW Group franchises, and it's a bit mad for Cupra to be there with agency sales and, let's say, Seat often next to it, not with agency sales, using the conventional model. But in reality, probably, I mean, some of that is probably true. It is a bit mad to have two different processes going on at the same time. But you would imagine it's more to do with the situation that we're in the market at the minute of car manufacturers needing to push models out, and they just simply can't do it in the same way under agency. So there's that element. There's also, moving over to Mini, we have had a Mini dealer. Well, you've put moans in the title of this. I don't think that's...
It's only because it had good alliteration. mini dealer moans. I quite like it.
Okay, very good.
Thanks.
Well, our moaning words of James Baggett, Mini dealer, has said that agency model has hit their sales and disrupted dealerships. And I mean, would it be fair to say that this particular Mini dealer is not normally someone to have a pop at the brand either, James?
No, I would say that, and it sort of feels like it sort of felt like it was a last straw. The fact that they wrote to us with this very, eloquent letter, with a I say letter like it turned up in the post, very eloquent email that just had some fantastic points in it about how it's actually working, how it's not really working. It just sort of felt to me that they thought they'd had to come to the press and say something because they weren't being listened to at HQ.
Which is not ideal. I mean, he says Leads are down 30%. Sales are poor, but more than that, I mean, the thing that kind of got me is how it affects the whole rhythm of the dealership, as he put it. Agency affects things like not test cars, whatsoever, demonstrators, all that sort of stuff, et cetera, and it just throws the whole thing out. I will say he's not entirely negative about the whole thing. They're a couple of months in, I think, aren't they, James? And it could
It started March
improve.
the 1st, it started, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but you just look around the rest of the marketplace. Who's still hanging on with agency? It's pretty much Volvo.
And
Volvo and
Mercedes.
Mercedes. It's those two. And everyone else seems to dip in and out of it when it suits them. Thoughts, James?
Yeah, I mean, I wrote these stories, and yeah, I found it very interesting that they one followed the other very rapidly. I mean, it's clearly still a very hot topic out there. I think, I wrote about this in my Substack, my newsletter that went out this morning, because what is the fascination with agency sales? Up until this point, it's been the fact that manufacturers thought that they could take a little bit more of the margin by selling the cars themselves. They like to pin it on the fact that they think it's a better way of selling the cars and the customers prefer it. But however, I mean, the proof in the pudding is it's not. It doesn't actually work that way. I think the problem we have is dealers, on the whole, dislike it. Most of the ones who I speak to who are either threatened with agency or are operating under it don't like it. But because they're franchise holders, they can't say that. So they have to come to us and moan about it privately, because if they put their head above the parapet, they would no longer be franchise holders. So you have this real difficult situation. The other thing is manufacturers have spent a huge amount of money putting these schemes in place. They've had to build websites that are transactional. They've had to take on lots of staff to deal with these sorts of things. They've invested large amounts of money into it. And I think in the case of Mini, I mean, BMW have already parked it. They said they were going to do it, but they've parked it. I think with Mini, it was a bit like the horse had already bolted. They got so far down the line that they had to put it into place. And I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, there was a couple of dealers that have said to me they don't think it's going to last. They just had to show that they'd made the efforts and put it into place. And obviously we've had Volkswagen this week. They've tried it. Well, I mean, if it was working, they'd still be doing it, wouldn't they? So why have they gone back to the wholesale model? The thing that I find very, very baffling is Volkswagen keeps saying it's our long-term ambition to do agency sales. Well, I mean, I can't see it ever coming back. I mean, they've tried it.
Part of the problem as well that it's not just, you look at some manufacturers have managed to do it from the start. I mean, I was about to say Polestar, but I think Polestar is now going the other way. Is it not? Tesla maybe is the best example of agency from the very start, but they don't have dealers, do they, in quite the same way? They don't have partners. They're just all wholly owned Tesla franchises, as far as I'm aware. But like the example in this is, say, Targets. They've brought this new system in. It's wedging a new system into an existing setup that's the problem. Suddenly, well, if you're doing it like this, do you need all the premises that you have, and should you still be paid on targets when you can't drive sales in quite the same way? It doesn't quite work, does it?
No, I mean, they've just tried to fix a problem that just wasn't there.
Well,
I mean, dealers are entrepreneurial. They do very, very good jobs of running their businesses. They can drive volume when they need to drive volume. They can do deals when they need to do deals. And this agency takes that away from it. I just want to make one point though, John, because I posted this on my LinkedIn, and there was a large amount of conversation with people commenting underneath it. I posted both these stories, and someone said, "Oh, I'd love to hear from a Mercedes dealer how they're getting on." And funnily enough, a Mercedes dealer put a comment on there. A guy called Christian Cormier. He's the head of sales from Mercedes-Benz and Smart at Brooklands. And the person had said, "I'd love to hear from them. What do these sales executives? Do they even have sales executives?" And his answer was, "They are still sales executives. In fact, nothing much has changed in terms of what they do. Customers inquire to their closest agent. The details are given to the sales executive, and then the exec helps the customer to buy the right car on the right finance plan in the right time frame and with the right price for a part exchange." sort of sounds like wholesale to me. That he says it's literally the exact same process. He said, having recently transferred to Mercedes-Benz, I'd say the agency model is working fine. Of course, it takes a while to change processes and figure things out. Mini has only been at it for a few weeks. Very few people enjoy big change, but I'd say the agency for Mercedes-Benz seems to have worked very well. Interesting comment, isn't it? I mean, hearing from somebody on the inside there, he's a Mercedes dealer. Of course, he's going to say publicly that it's working really well and everything's hunky-dory. But nice to hear from that side of the fence too.
Claire, what are your thoughts on agency?
What are my thoughts? Yeah, I think the big unspoken thing is the systems, and actually, for it to work really well, you've got to have the systems in place, and that's now relying on the manufacturer and being able to, as you say, source those leads and bring them in. And I think maybe that dealer's comment is a sign that Mercedes have worked it out, and maybe they're doing a better job of actually sourcing the leads, and maybe others have not found it so easy to build those systems and put them in place. And having been involved in doing that, I can attest to it's not the work of a moment, and it's not easy. I think the other one is around, maybe there's no brand loyalty. Well, brand loyalty is reducing, not no brand loyalty, but it's reducing. But there's definitely dealer loyalty. That definitely exists. And this model disrupts that, and actually going back to the Chinese cars, your loyalty to your dealer, if your dealer takes on a Chinese brand and can talk to you about it, I think you're much more likely to trust them and go for it. And this model doesn't really play to that. So yeah, really interesting to see that this rollback on agency.
What do you drive, Claire?
I've got an Ioniq 5 Namsan special edition.
When you bought that, did you obviously bought it from a dealer?
No, I got it actually through Octopus EV on a
Did
BCA.
you? So that's effectively like an agency sale, isn't it? In some respects,
it is. Yeah, it is. So it's really interesting. I guess I always think I'm too far in the industry to kind of worry about that process for myself. And I knew what I wanted, and I knew I wanted that special edition, and so that was an easy kind of knock in for me. Conversely, the classic, my mum is still looking for an EV. She's still not, no one's persuaded her yet to go across the line, but she likes going to dealers. She likes to talk to them. She likes to give them a bit of a hard time, to be honest. And she likes the
I know those sort of people.
Yeah. Would you like to come on the podcast?
You probably would, to be honest. And she likes to go, and she likes to be sold to. She likes to go in, and if they don't do what they're supposed to and open the door and give her a coffee and sit her down and da-da-da, that's really important because she's going to spend a lot of money. So I think, I definitely am not the target customer for that, model. But I think my mum and lots of people in my circle they want to go to the dealer. They want to have that dealer experience, even though they might tell you in a survey that they definitely buy a car off Amazon or they definitely do everything else digitally. When it comes to this big purchase, it's like buying a house. You're not going to buy a house off a website. You're going to go and have a look around. It's the same with a vehicle. Even if you end up then doing your purchase online or a digital route, I think a lot of people want to go and see it and touch it, particularly moving to new models as well.
Yeah, both those things work hand in hand. You hit the nail on the head there, really. It's like it's that online purchasing experience, isn't it? It's like how many people are actually that confident to go through the whole process without actually seeing the car. You still need to go to a dealer and try it out and test drive it, don't you? That's the thing with agency. I just don't think it all marries up. If you then have to go back home and do the order, it just
at which point you could get bored and something else comes along, or something else puts you off. That's the other thing,
Yeah, I think it's gonna be
bricks versus clicks.
Indeed. Right, shall I move us on?
Yes. Go on.
Okay. Can I talk about getting FCA approval, John?
If you want to, yeah.
Well, I mean,
I've had some espresso, so
you've talked to me about electric cars, so let me talk to you about the FCA. No, this was a big thing for us at the Clever Car Collection because when I started the project, the business, I wanted it to be a genuine car dealership. When that started, obviously we started at home. One of the first steps was getting a premises, obviously being VAT registered and doing things properly. And I think FCA was that sort of elusive goal that I really wanted because, it's a bit of a kind of mark of authority, isn't it? In some respects, you have to jump through a lot of hoops to get there. But we have finally got our FCA approval. And I know I've mentioned this on the podcast before, but the reason I bring it up now is I've written about what it was actually like, what the process was actually like, because I found it quite surprising, if I'm honest. It was scary in places. It took a long time, and just the first form that you have to fill in is called, I think, long form A or something from the FCA. I mean, like the worst named form.
Looking forward to long form B.
Nice. Now, FCA Form A, that's it. No, there's no long in it. I've added the long. But it was accurate because it was like this opus of a document, this huge thing that you have to fill in. It took forever. But I had the help of automotive compliance, so they sort of guided me through this process along the way. They gave me, if I struggled on any parts of these things, I could pick up the phone to them, ask them the questions. And once that had been submitted to the FCA and we got our number, there's sort of the compliance side of the business is obviously very important. You don't want to fall foul of the FCA. And I've had to deal with this now over the last couple of weeks, and I find it a little bit awkward in places. There was a huge amount of e-learning that we had to do. So Joe and I had to sit through huge number of online quizzes and tests. It took like a good couple of weeks to go through all of this stuff. We were SAF approved, which is the Finance and Leasing Association's tests that you have to do. So there's lots of boring acronyms, John, that you have to, and lots of hoops that you have to jump through. But we managed all that, and now we're in this new world of this new process of selling cars. Which feels it's sort of jarring. So when a customer comes in, even if they want to pay cash, you have to sit them down before they even start talking about money. You have to sit them down and run through this sort of kind of like online form, which automotive compliance provides, which sort of says that we're FCA regulated, we've got a duty of care, and you have to explain that we offer finance, even though they don't want it and have clearly said they don't want to use it. You have to tell these people that you can offer finance. And the reason being is there's a worry that if somebody in a couple of years' time decided that finance would have been better for them, at that point in time, and you hadn't mentioned it, they might come back and make a claim.
Yes, but what would they be claiming for?
I have no idea. But I mean, this is one of the things.
Finance costs them more money.
Well, I mean, it might be a PCP or I mean, I don't want to give you financial advice, John, over the because I'm not allowed to do that.
But you are an authorised representative.
Yeah, I know. I'm probably in hot water. It is.
And not in your current office. You need to move down the road to do that.
I might just have to take you through stage one, John. But no, anyway, there's this process that you now have to run through, which I just find is it's even when someone rings up and say, what's your best price? You say, well, look, before I talk money, I have to run you through this process. It's difficult, but I mean that's all part of being FCA regulated and kind of doing it in the right way. But I've found that quite well. I mean, as your face has just said, it's quite an awkward thing to do, isn't it?
Well, it is, because it sounds like when you go to Currys and buy a new telly, they go, "Oh, now I do have to talk to you about the warranty." If
it really does, it really does, and it feels salesy. And me. I'm anything but salesy.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's fine in a big retail organisation where you expect that, but they've come to you because you are a small operator and you give them some flowers and wine.
There's a certain amount of time that you have to allocate to this as well. The system sort of times you and on like how long you get to do it, and it's kind of you obviously have to follow the rules. But it's just something that the reason I mention it is I had no idea. I honestly had no idea. We were there's a world where you can operate, which we have been doing for the last 18 months, selling used cars, that is so far removed from this new way. So Joe and I have just had sort of been hit around the head with it a little bit and had to change the whole process. And then when you hand the car over, there's a second questionnaire thing that you have to run through these customers with. And I'm sure people listening to this podcast who run dealerships and who have been offering finance, just they do this day in, day out, and I'm sure I'll eventually get used to it. But it's been a bit of a shock to the system, if I'm honest.
How many sales have you done now on finance?
We've done one, but I've quoted another one, and they're coming to see a Toyota Aygo this afternoon and want to buy it on finance. So and it's like, actually, if we can get those incremental sales that would otherwise go somewhere else because we couldn't offer finance, then it's worth doing, isn't it? We use Octane Finance as our broker, so it's quite good. You just kind of send them an indicative quote, and then they deal with Octane and do all of that outside of our network. I'm not sat there kind of writing finance deals and work, doing the full proposals. You sort of send them a link and they fill it all in their own time. So it is a little bit more hands off, which I quite like. But it's just this extra layer of regulation I found a little bit jarring.
Do you know what happens if, let's say a Mondeo buyer takes a car out on finance and then decides it's not for him? What then happens if it's on finance?
You've just given me a headache even thinking about it, John. I have no idea. I mean,
okay.
Yeah, I'm sure you probably have to unwind it in some way and give them their money back. And yeah, I don't know. What happened there?
You briefly went away, but I'm sure it's fine.
Oh, great. I'm back. Excellent. Anyway, so I don't know whether you saw that little piece that I wrote, but it's been a bit of a shock to the system, John.
Yeah, it was really exciting. So shall I move us on then? We're actually running out of time, but I'm going to squeeze in one more story because we've not got a balanced number of stories if you ended with that one. Although really, was that a story, James? I don't know.
Oh, it's sort of an anecdote.
But I'm going to go with a human interest story, sort of, and the interest being in my neck of the woods because Subaru. And this is a Subaru dealer has hailed the most loyal customer ever after handing over their 26th new car, all from the same dealer in Aylesbury. Aylesbury doesn't strike me as a particular Subaru hotspot either, because I'm not really sure what you need permanent four-wheel drive for in the home counties. But there we are, to each their own. I mean, I say that. I own a Subaru and live in the Midlands, so see snow about once every 4 years. So this gentleman took delivery of his first Subaru, a legacy estate, back in 1995. So, I mean, my maths is a bit squiffy, but that's 26 cars in not 26 years, isn't it? 20 years. So he's been through quite a lot of them. I mean, if anything, the reason I bring this up is because the conversation we just had about how much is the brand and how much is the dealer. I suspect a lot of it is the dealer. Yeah.
I did wonder how you're going to string this story out from more than 30 seconds. So, yeah.
I mean, I like Subarus a lot, but I'm not sure I need 26 of them in a row. But fair play to him.
Yeah, fair play to him. I thought your last story was going to be about your newfound love, John.
Sorry?
You know how you've suddenly taken on the new love of exercise. I thought you'd want to talk on the podcast about that.
I went for one walk.
Yeah, but
I'm glad you mentioned it, James, because I can show you my shorts that say running on, and they've even got 3 stripes.
I mean, that's the thing. That's the reason I wanted to bring up on the podcast is because you went for a walk in the morning, but you dressed up like you were going to go for a marathon. You were going to do a marathon. You had like proper trainers on, shorts, and like a kind of running vest.
Yeah, that's here.
There it is.
I bought it in John Lewis, the traditional place I believe people buy their sportswear. Is that not correct?
Of course. Oh, they're completely unrelated to the podcast, but I just wanted to bring it up nonetheless.
Well, thanks so much for that. Look, it's couched to 5K, but I've got no intention of doing 5K. Really don't want to leave the couch.
Oh dear, sorry, Claire. Sorry, I
didn't. Honestly,
no, I'm very entertained by your both your running gear and where you procured it. I think that is one of my biggest learnings of the whole podcast, to be honest.
Brilliant. That was the story of the podcast. Excellent. Oh dear, John, bring it to a close.
Okay. So, Claire, before I ask your verdict, are there any other stories you think we should have talked about this week in the motor industry as a whole?
Well, I am going to take your running, and I'm going to talk about, very super briefly, London Marathon and £20,000 raised for Ben. So yes. Brilliant charity, brilliant to see all the runners. Probably something I will never do. So very happy to chip in to a few of those runners. And yeah, just a brilliant effort. So that was my, human interest, heartwarming story. Ben is a brilliant charity.
Yeah,
definitely. I quite agree. Unfortunately, nobody will be able to sponsor me until at least 2035, but I'm getting there.
If you do a marathon, John, I will definitely sponsor you.
I might walk it. So I'm going to have to ask you, who chose the best stories? Who's your winner?
I am going to have to go for Heycar because it was a bit of a shocker, but it also shines a light on the almost total dominance of Auto Trader. So one to watch, is this an opportunity for a number 2 to emerge? Watch this space.
That means I win.
It does mean you win.
It's 2
Very
weeks
well
away.
deserved win, James. A well
Thank
deserved
you.
win.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Claire. I very much appreciate it, and I will take your win with gratitude. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, on that very pleasant note, all that's left for me to say is thank you to Claire and James, and thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with other episodes, so make sure you're subscribed so you can be notified when that goes live. We didn't even mention in this that actually you can now watch, in theory, if I've edited this and put it online, watch these podcasts on YouTube rather than listening to us in your ears. You still listen to us in your ears. It's approaching lunchtime now, can you tell? But if you go to our second YouTube channel, we now have 2, called Car Dealer Insights, you can watch this in full if you'd prefer to do that. And look at our lovely faces and indeed my running equipment. So head over to Car Dealer Insights on YouTube to do just that. And if you want to check out the stories we mentioned today, you can take a look in the show notes below or head to cardealermagazine.co.uk. Thanks for listening and goodbye.